Welcome to Contemporary Topics in Aerospace Engineering. In this series of videos, I would like to discuss current topics in aerospace engineering based on a recent report by The Economist magazine. I would like to read and discuss at the same time directly from the website to actually familiarize you to first-hand materials and how to read and think deep about a subject, about aerospace engineering in particular. But you can use these skills to actually read and think deeply about anything. I hope it will benefit you in different ways also. Okay, let's go to the article directly. In this course, I try to use first-hand resources from the web directly and try to show you how you can learn about aerospace and current trends in aerospace directly from mainstream media. Therefore, I would spend some time reading and discussing what I like to call deep reading, reading with great intent, and reading and studying together. So let's try to do this together. The report starts with a title, a flashing title. It says, "Despite setbacks, aviation is changing fast." So it announces setbacks already, and the technology of aviation industry is changing fast. So setbacks and a fast change. And in the subtitle, it is said that the industry must continue to balance conservatism and innovation. This Technology Quarterly and special reports by the magazine are signed. This is signed by Jeffrey Carr. Otherwise the magazine is all editorial, which gives its authority, let's say. So this is a signed report. Okay, the report opens with the recent tragedy of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft that we discussed in our previous classes offline. So let us go through this together. On March 10th, a Boeing 737, so this is last year March, MAX, the latest version of the firm's best-selling narrow-bodied airliner, fell from the sky in Ethiopia. All 157 souls on board were lost. This followed the crash off the coast of Java less than 5 months earlier of another 737 MAX. That was in October 2018, and the death toll then was 189. Together they make 346 deaths. The tragedy is that we have these two accidents about 6 months apart due to the same aircraft, 737 MAX. Now we know the immediate cause in both cases seems to have been a faulty sensor feeding false data to an avionic flight management system that had in turn had new software which pilots has not been briefed about. So the 737 MAX, this new airplane, had an avionic flight management system that was the pilots didn't know about it completely. They didn't know about the change in the avionics system. The flight management system insisted, that's the computer, insisted on overriding the actions of the pilots who didn't know how to respond, and this precipitated a stall rather than, as intended, preventing one. So therefore the aircraft stalled and fell from the sky, killing altogether about 350 people. That's a tragedy. So the report opens with this tragedy, the tragedies, or rather. So that was the state of Boeing company last year, in the middle of last year. And the report opens with this. Tragedy. Okay, so where do we go from here? Then, in the second paragraph, we are told that these two tragedies illuminate the tension between conservatism and innovation. These two keywords were actually on the subtitle. So the author underscores conservatism and innovation. The report says conservatism and innovation lie at the heart of civil aviation technology. I think this is something we should think deep about it, conservatism and innovation. Maybe you are thinking aerospace, aircraft technology, aeronautical engineering is all about innovation. But here we are reminded that there is a lot of conservatism involved in our craft also. Maybe this is surprising for you to learn about it. But in which sense is it a balance between conservatism and innovation? The author makes an, if I might say, an oblique reference to a character in The Leopard, a novel about the revolutionary events of Italy's unification in the 19th century. So in that novel, one of the heroes say, if we want things to remain as they are, everything needs to change. If things are to remain as they are, everything needs to change. It sounds almost like an oxymoron at this point. If you want things to remain as they are, everything needs to change. So the paragraph concludes with this last statement. Attempts by the industry to follow that advice seem to have been what ultimately caused these crashes. So it's not clear at this point what does this really entail, but let's keep this mantra in mind and we continue. If we want things to remain as they are, everything needs to change. So let's look back again to the history of 737. It goes back many years. It was conceived in the 1960s when engines were smaller, jet engines were smaller, and passengers generally embarked and disembarked using staircases. The staircases wheeled in for the purpose rather than air bridges that we are used to getting on the planes nowadays, connected directly to a terminal building. Small engines allowed the staircases. Small engines allowed and the staircases encouraged a design that kept the fuselage of the aircraft close to the ground. Okay. At this point, let me summarize the above paragraphs and share a picture with you to make things more easier to understand. So we emphasize setbacks and a changing industry. And then we discussed the industry must continue to balance conservatism and innovation. So conservatism is also involved as well as innovation. You can go to the internet and then learn more about what Festina Lente is about. So here is this is a 707, not 737. But basically it's a very similar airplane. Look at the jet engines here and then compare it to the MAX jet engines. So it's the same fuselage, almost the same frame. You are actually putting incredibly large turbofan engines on the wings. So things has to change, as you can see when you are changing the jet engines dramatically. Okay, so this is 60s and this is the 737 MAX. We will come to this picture a little later. Okay. Now let's dive more into the 737 story. By the time 737 MAX was being planned, this had changed. Now we have larger engines, modern turbofan engines with wide air intakes required. So the engine size required, and air bridges now available, permitted. Alterations to the airframe that also altered its handling characteristics, its trim, to keep things as they were and avoid pilots having to recertify to fly the new version, therefore cutting time and saving money. Its avionics software was tweaked to make the new planes trim feel to a pilot like the old planes. That would have been fine as long as the sensors feeding information to those avionics worked properly and the pilots themselves knew what was going on, but they didn't. The case of the 737 MAX is an extreme example of conservatism at work in aircraft design. So we are talking about 70 years of same design. But the same is happening in the automobile industry as well. The cars more or less look the same, isn't it? But retaining the familiar is a recurring theme. A Boeing 707, the plane that ushered in mass intercontinental air transport in the 1950s, appears to the untutored eye much like the current offerings of Boeing and Airbus, the main makers of airlines. Both old and new are porthole tubes that have two swept-back wings. Now this is a nice description, almost to a child or an alien, what a plane looks like. Both old and new are porthole tubes, so a tube with windows that have two swept-back wings, okay, sticking out of their sides, about halfway long. You can almost imagine this in your mind's eye. They have three stabilizer fins, two horizontal and one vertical at the stern, the back end. Pods containing their engines hang on pylons from their wings. So the engines mounted on pylons from the wings. So this is what an airplane is, if you want to explain it to an alien. You can rewind the video and read this part once again. Okay, festina lente is to make haste, to be quick in a slow way. That's an oxymoron, of course. Attempts to change these arrangements have been proposed, most notably Boeing's Delta Wing Sonic Cruiser in the early 2000s. That's the picture that you saw a while ago. Okay, I'm talking about this picture now. This is the Sonic Cruiser of the 2000s. This aircraft was never built, so it was ditched. The project was stopped. We will learn about the reasons now. But apart from Concorde, a supersonic aircraft, that is, in which the delta wing arrangements was imposed by the laws of physics, such changes have never got anywhere. That is the Sonic Cruiser. So Sonic Cruiser also had a delta wing shape. Concorde also had a delta wing to make it a supersonic aircraft. Now engineers know how to keep it safe, and the world's airports have grown in synergy with it. Now the reference here is to the standard classic aircraft design. Engineers know how to keep it safe, and the world's airports have grown in synergy with it. But now an aircraft looks the same in the last 50, 60, 70 years. But beneath this conservative geometry, however, airliner technology has improved enormously and is still improving. In which way? Well, better materials are making planes lighter and more comfortable to fly in. Better engines are making them quieter and cheaper to run. And better avionics are, despite exceptions of the sort we just see, are making them safer. So these three. And then summarize this. Let's say it once again. So beneath this outward conservative geometry, the report says airliner technology has improved enormously and is still improving. And the improvement are materials. Better materials make better, lighter planes and comfortable planes to fly in. Better engines are making them quieter and cheaper, light on fuel, and better avionics are making them safer. Okay. Now, we'll come back to the... we just talked about two tragedies. Is it safe to fly? Yes, of course. Look at this graph. Global passenger flights, fatalities per million flights, that is people dying per million flights. The graph is from the late 70s until today, so this is a 40-year timeline. Look, it was about 4 fatalities per million flights, and today we have much less than that. So this is about 0.2 fatalities per million flights. Of course, we are having more flights nowadays, but still the graph shows the clear trend of commercial flights becoming more safer with time. That's a convincing plot. Let's turn back to the avionics. Those better avionics also point inexorably in another direction. Better avionics. They point to a direction, to a day when most aircraft will no longer require a pilot. Airlines and their passengers and regulators may take a while to come to terms with this, so it's likely that pilots will sit in cockpits long after they are needed for anything other than the reassurance of the paying public. So you will have pilots in the cockpit, but they will do nothing for a while, just to make people happy. You don't want your pilots to be working from home, if you think about it. But if not commercial airliners, armed forces are embracing a pilotless future already. Surveillance and missile-carrying drones have been around for a couple of decades. The 2020s will see robot military helicopters introduced and pilotless fighter jets starting to emerge. Even though these jets will, at least to begin with, be parts of squadrons, teams that have a human leader in control, cargo aircraft, military cargo, probably civilian cargo also, will be robotized as well. So this is the avionics part. Better avionics is actually pointing into a direction of autonomous aircrafts. New technology is also extending the concept of civil aviation. The idea of supersonic transport for civilians is back on the cards 16 years after Concorde's last flight. Now Concorde is not flying anymore. Supersonic flights are on the cards again. So this is another interesting point that the report makes. 3 firms in America in particular have plausible designs for supersonic transports, appropriate commercial partnerships, and they hope sufficient money to get prototypes flying over the next years. So supersonic flight, we will be talking about this in the next videos. And another fantasy, flying cars, seems likely to become real in the next few years, as firms, both new and old, rush to build electrically propelled 1- and 2-seater aircraft of novel design. So electric cars, the design is basically electrically propelled 1- or 2-seater aircraft of different designs. Some will act as remotely controlled taxis, some will be the SUVs of the sky, piloted by their owners over city traffic jams and winding country roads alike. Okay, the report concludes with these 2 paragraphs. Let us also conclude with these 2 paragraphs. In these 2 areas, supersonic flight and urban mobility, change is happening that is reminiscent of the glory days of aeronautics, the half century after 1903, the year that Wright brothers made the first widely recognized heavier-than-air powered flight at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Flying cars, especially if they can be proved safe and manageable by air traffic control systems, may change transport networks almost as much as their ground-based brethren did a century ago. So, city transport might get a radical change due to air taxis, by being able to avoid the congestion that the multiplication of those cars has brought. Conventional civil aviation is also growing fast. The number of jet airliners flying may double by 2040. As people, particularly those in Asia who do not fly now, get richer, that will bring environmental problems. the doubling of civil aviation might bring environmental problems. Environmental aspect of aviation is something that we will be discussing a lot in these videos. For aviation is the least tractable of industries to decarbonization in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, for the simple reason that you can't still have battery energy density to support electric flight of large aircrafts. But smaller aircraft are already being electrified, as we will see very soon in these videos. And so far, attempts to make such fuel synthetically, that is biosynthesis or chemosynthesis, rather than from petroleum, have foundered on cost, meaning they are not feasible yet. The embrace of or the resistance to the growth of aviation may depend on whether that too can change. So the growth of aviation is not celebrated all around the world yet. It depends if it is green enough to be supported. And let's make a summary of what we discussed. Okay. So the trends to watch, or if you are ambitious to catch, are autonomous flight, supersonic travel, urban mobility, new materials, electric flight, and decarbonization, meaning decreasing carbon dioxide and other noxious gas emissions. In other words, electrifying the flight. And okay, in the next video we will continue with aircraft construction.